I literally got in my car and drove to New Orleans, walked into a sign shop there. This guy's name was David Lividay. He owned High Tech Signs at the time. And I said, hey, I met the owner, and I said, can I hang out here for a day? I'm over at a sign shop in Baton Rouge. He looked at me, thought I was crazy. I said, sure. I took him to lunch, talked all day, spent the whole day, came back, and just didn't know much about signs at all. But honestly, that was Superior Signs. That was a predecessor, a different company.
Right.
And then I wouldn't say the first 6 months our signs weren't very good, but we grew like wildfire.
We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array of treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the NXT Entrepreneur Podcast. We're here at the Propel Productions podcast studio in Baton Rouge, and we welcome our guest, Mr. Stephen St. Cyr. Stephen, welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here.
So you are president of Vivid Ink Graphics as well as Vivid Imprint.
Well, I'm technically only president of Vivid Ink Graphics.
Okay.
Aaron is president of Vivid Imprint, but I do own the majority of both.
I see. So tell us what each of those businesses do.
So Vivid Ink Graphics is a sign, graphics, and printing company. So basically, if you walk into a bank or a restaurant or a business, look around, everything you see and don't think about, we probably made it, could have made it, whether it's the flyer, brochure, or the wall graphics, or the custom wallpaper, or the decals on the floor, or the sign telling you where to go, or the parking sign telling you where to park. Anything that's a sign or a graphic or a print, we produce in-house.
So it could be on paper,
Paper, metal, wood, plastic, you name it. We've done it on just about anything.
Yeah. And then on the imprint side.
So the imprint side does apparel and adds specialty. So it would do my shirt, it would do your hat, it would do your giveaways, your pencils, your koozies. It produces in-house and orders a lot as well, depending on time and manufacturing process, really. So they have 4 embroiders, embroider all day, screen print, plus if you want to give away a lot of Christmas gifts, they're very busy right now with corporate Christmas gifts.
Right.
That's what they do.
So what is your split between, or how do you define local sales, or is it Louisiana sales versus national?
So for us, a national sale it doesn't really matter so much where it's based, but it's a chain with 5 or more different operations. So if you are, for example, Don's Seafood is based here, but it's still a national because they have a bunch of, same thing with Rotolos. They would be a national. Now, it doesn't have to be a restaurant. We do a bunch of dental franchises, do a bunch of Made Pro cleaning, a bunch of smoothie, health food things. But anything that's chain, that has a corporate office and lots of franchise or distribution, that would be a national.
And then anything smaller than that would fall under your local.
Yeah, it's not so much size as much as the structure. So like Exxon is large, the refinery is large, but it's still local. It's still one entity organized. Community is very large, but it's still local because everything's ordered by one marketing. It's one company. You don't have separate franchisees, organizations.
Oh,
so community is very large and has some tendency. When I say community, I mean community coffee.
Right.
Has some tendencies like a national, but we still treat them like a local.
Yeah.
But when you talk about Raising Cane's, they have 550 restaurants everywhere. Lots of different managers, lots of different owners, lots of different pricing segments, lots of different sports franchises that they sponsor. That would be a national.
Yeah, got it. So I was intrigued to learn a little bit more about how this works. We've had marketing and advertising folks on the podcast, but in talking with you, I got a better sense of how it works from your perspective. So I was looking at an example of a big national client, let's say, that you may have. So they tell me if I'm interpreting this right, but they'll come up with the need for a marketing campaign, introduce a new product, service, etc. So they'll hire a national, maybe advertising or marketing firm who will come up with creativity, the whole strategy, and right?
Correct.
And then, which involves your products, a lot of printed material, whatever it is, banners or print material. So help me understand, who would hire you in that instance? Are the advertising agencies reaching out to you? Do you have relationships with the actual company, or is it a mix?
Usually it's if you're talking national, it's a little bit different between national and local. It's the corporate marketing group. So whether it's Shipley Donuts or McAllister's Deli or Raising Cane's, they all have in-house marketers. Right. So that's going to be our client. Now, kind of parallel to us, they'll have an ad agency that will do a lot of the creative, the design. So they'll do usually quarterly promotions, which is a promotion that's changed out. And you'll have lots of signs with it, lots of menu changes, lots of both big menus and small menus, and everything from graphics to point of purchase items. And most of those will be designed by the ad agency. So ad agencies will send them us, and we'll print a prototype. We'll print one of everything, which we will overnight to the corporate office to then approve it, and then they'll approve it or make changes, and then we'll take it from there. So we don't compete with the ad agencies or the marketers. That's really our clients. So we're a production house.
Right.
We produce things as opposed to now. I have, I think, 15 graphic designers on staff, but that we design so we can print. We install so we can print. So what we are fundamentally is a big commercial graphics production house, basically big printer.
Yeah, it was interesting to learn that on the big projects, they'd have a big national firm maybe doing some of the design work. Maybe on smaller projects, some of your big clients may do some of that design work with their own in-house marketing.
Absolutely.
Team. And then, like you mentioned, your designers, a third option, is where you're providing some of those services as well, right?
Right. So Community Coffee would be a big example. They have several in-house designers. They have an agency. So if it's a big project, it's probably coming from the agency.
Got it.
If it's a medium project, their designers are going to do it in-house, and they have 2 or 3 graphic designers that work for Community Coffee. If it's a small project, like changing tax or they're just going to send it us to have our designers do it. But in all 3 cases, we work for the same marketing lady.
Got it.
So it depends it might be totally different people to design, but our customer hasn't changed.
So we took a tour of your facility yesterday, and
did you like it?
It was a little overwhelming.
It's surprising. Most people are not expecting it.
No, I mean, I am so glad that I came to see. I just didn't have a concept of the scope of the magnitude of what you do and the different things that you do.
Or the complexity.
Yeah. And it reminded me of a situation about 30 years ago, maybe longer than that, probably. But I was doing some work in a United States Postal Service processing and distribution center, actually on Bluebonnet. And it's an 800,000 square foot facility, massive facility. And when you walk back in that part of where the processing happens, it is overwhelming. At least it was to me back then. And I mean, just so much going on, so many people, so much equipment, automated equipment. And I remember walking out of there going, and this was back when a stamp cost 25 cents, right?
Right.
And I remember thinking, man, what a deal. How could they ever, mail something for 25 cents after you see everything that's going on there? And I kind of had a similar feeling after walking through your facilities and looking at all the different lines. So you have 5 lines in there, right?
In Vivid Ink Graphics, there's 5 manufacturing lines. That's correct. Then there's Vivid Imprint has its own manufacturing.
Right. So on the graphics side, you've got what would you call that? There's 3 lines that are
graphics. There's roll printing, which prints anything on rolls, mostly vinyl decals, vehicle grabs, floor decals, banners, lots and lots of banners, anything that you can put on a roll. And a lot of window clings. Restaurant window clings is big. Then you've got the flatbeds or the rigid, which prints anything on a flat surface. So boards, signs, aluminum signs, metal signs, parking signs, you name it. Anything that you would think of as a sign that's hard. And then you got labels that are labels that would go on packages and beer. We do a lot of breweries, a lot of food service labels. So those are 3 labels in graphics. 3 lines. I'm sorry, 3 lines in graphics. Then you have 2 lines in printing, and that's basically broken down by volume. You got digital printing, which is when you're doing hundreds or a few thousands of the same thing, sheets. And a sheet is either 13 by 19 or 23 by 29. So if you have 3,000 or less, it's going to be digital. When you get into many thousands, we're going to send it to offset. It's just a different production method for higher volume jobs.
That's older school.
Older school.
Yeah.
But now we have a digital offset press.
Oh, really?
Which is kind of a merge, a hybrid of the two.
Yeah, so getting a feel for that, walking around your plant and seeing how much equipment you have. And it's obviously very expensive equipment.
Correct.
And it's a capital-intensive business that you're in, right?
And unfortunately, the digital stuff doesn't last very long.
Really?
5 to 7 years to throw it away.
Oh, my goodness.
And so you got to get your money out of it in 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
The old, like the offset, that's about the only thing that lasts for long periods of time.
Yeah. That looked like it had been around a while. Had some character to it.
Yeah.
So you've got real estate.
Yes, sir.
You've got equipment, and you need a lot of square footage to do what you do.
You need a lot of square footage.
Right? You got 90,000 roughly.
In Baton Rouge and 20,000 in New Orleans.
Yeah. And then personnel and IT and stuff. But I'm interested from the business perspective of how you address those capital expenses as it relates to debt. What are your thoughts on that?
So even though I'm a finance guy by nature, that's my training,
right?
I'm still kind of a low debt guy, which is kind of surprising because I'm a high risk guy. I have a very, very high risk tolerance, always have. I don't know why. But we don't take killer risk or risk that can kill you. So in year 2 of the business, we came up with a philosophy that basically said, whatever we make, we're going to send 25% to the government for taxes for the owners. And we're going to put 50% into the business, and we're going to dividend 25%. And because we've always put 50% of earnings back in, we've waited till we could pay cash for anything to pay for it. So everything you saw, we own outright.
That's amazing.
We don't have any debt other than the buildings,
right.
Which is a separate company. The buildings is
right. So, but what that says is, when you've got a big purchase ahead of you, that means you have to have saved a bunch of money, right?
Right.
But that says a lot. I mean, it says a lot for the health of your business, and I can see where you could afford to be a little more high risk if your debt is low, right?
Right. So years ago, this is long before we started Vivid Ink, my brother and I started a company called Sirius Software, which is the software we still run. Now, I sold my half to him when I opened Vivid 20 plus years ago, and 5 years ago he sold out. But at one point, this is probably 25 years ago, we had a plan, a vision to grow it. And it was ahead of its time. It was a cloud-based before anything was cloud-based. Oh, wow. And it was right, but it was too early. And we went out and raised $250,000 in 2 days. So, and this would have been 25, 30 years ago. And at that time, that was an awful lot of money.
Right.
But then we were supposed to raise $5 million, and we couldn't. and it ended up. So we took a very profitable business and made it unprofitable. And then my brother and the controller at the time and I got in a room and had to, okay, we got to get cash. We're done. We got to get cash flow positive. And the next day I had to lay off like 25 people. And I said I would never do that again. I said that was a learning mistake. I'll never lay. And so
that defined your risk tolerance or your.
I said I fired lots of people, right, but I won't lay them off for lack of work or because of I failed. I didn't want to ever do that. Right. And so because historically any business goes up and down, you have good times and bad times. I never wanted to be in a scenario where I had to lay people off because we were going into depression or downtime or we lost a big client or whatever. I only wanted to fire people because of lack of performance.
Right.
And so we basically, in our 21 years, we have never had to lay anybody off, even COVID.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Now, we've let people go who needed to be let go, but we've never fired people because we didn't have any work.
Yeah, but it's particularly interesting when you talk about COVID because walking around your plant, I did see where you have a lot of restaurant clients.
Yes.
Or vendors whose product appear in restaurants, et cetera. But how did that impact your business?
So 2020 was our first down year ever. So we had, in 21 years, we have had 2 flat years, and 2020 was our first down year. We dropped about 6-7%.
That's all.
Yeah, but for us, that was a pretty significant.
That's a win. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, that was we were I don't know if pleased the right word, but we were okay. And it was all, the restaurants were really hurting. They had all shut down.
Right.
A lot of them, like Corner Bakery, which is just a restaurant chain.
Yeah.
That is mostly in malls. Mm-hmm. Well, you can imagine COVID shut down. Nobody was in malls during COVID. Right. So they were particularly hit hard by COVID. And of course, all the promotions dried up, all the things dried up. And we did have to go for a period of, I guess, 8-10 weeks where we went half cruise. So we because we're communications, we were deemed essential, so we could stay open, but we didn't have work for everybody. Right. And we did everything we could to get work. But we issued a bunch of extra COVID vacation. People had to use the vacation. For most of, we kept everyone almost paid in full,
right,
but they only worked half time for about 2 to 3 months.
I see.
And so we would work an A crew and then a B crew. So you'd work for a week and then off for a week, work for a week, off for a week. And we gave everybody 2 extra weeks of vacation to cover most of it.
Oh, that's fantastic. So another thing that was really fascinating for me to see in your operation, so much different than my businesses, where we have people working, on job sites.
Right.
And for the most part, everyone is there in your building. You have a Baton Rouge location, you have a New Orleans location, and you have installers, right, going out in the field. But virtually everyone else is.
Everyone but the installers are pretty much there.
Yeah. And so you've got your sales teams there. You do have inside and outside sales, right?
Yep.
Designers, production people, quality control, shipping, IT, finance, accounting, HR, installers, delivery. And so how many employees do you have all total?
All 3 companies, probably 160 to 165, maybe 170.
Yeah, and I mean, and when you walk through the buildings, there's a bunch of people in there.
Yeah, it's a lot of cars outside.
And there are a lot of cars outside, and but there's a lot of people moving. There's a lot of action.
It's labor intense.
It is, and it's exciting to see, but a little overwhelming.
We try to automate everything we can. It's still very labor intense.
Yeah.
It's still labor intense.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. So what is your theory on management of employees?
Well, ours is a little bit harder than some others because you different types of employees have different expectations. So, like if you have a friend of mine owns Envoke, and it's all professionals, it's all computer engineers, it's all high-paid software people, and while ours is a combination of a historically blue collar, white collar, all working in the same place. So you have your sales, your office, your production workers, your managers, everybody's there. And so we don't have different benefits, everybody gets the same. And so you have to learn to treat everybody fairly and rightly, regardless of what job they hold or what they do. It's a very open in the sense of, like, throughout the organization, they're taught to speak up if they disagree, but in the end, follow the decision made. So the production manager and I often disagree. The large format production manager, great guy, but he sees things from a production perspective. And while I have an operations undergraduate and I've been in operations, I'm a salesman at heart. And so in the end, I always listen, and we often butt heads. But in the end, and he definitely speaks his mind, but in the end, he does, like, I have to say, okay, this is the decision we're going to make. This is what we're going to do. You have to get behind it. And he will.
So is printing, is your products a commodity? I mean, is that how you look at it?
No. So offset is probably the most commoditized of all of them. Large format is very difficult for the small business owner, the small marketer to really understand. So the printing is more of a commodity than graphics.
Got it.
Because people can kind of understand 1,000 brochures is 1,000 brochures, 1,000 trifold is 1,000 trifold. But if you're talking about your sign on your building, and there's so many different materials, there's so laminate, unlaminated, there's so many different, like, I can use this ink or that ink. You really don't know you really can't compare apples to apples on signage like you can printing. So printing is more commodities, graphics is not.
Got it. So when you're pricing, production is huge, right?
Right.
And I was intrigued to learn how one piece of equipment may be the right for the job depending on the quantities versus another piece.
Correct. Absolutely.
So I can see where a competitor of yours could be less competitive if they don't have that next piece of equipment.
Right.
And
you always want to do what you do. So if you're a surgeon, you want a surgeon. You want to cut everything. If you're a carpenter, everything's a hammer. Well, if you only do offset, you want to offset everything. If you only do digital printing, you want to do digital printing everything. If you have certain types of banner roll printers that you want to run everything on that. But if it doesn't really make sense to that, and you try to run it like that, you're going to be price high.
Right.
We are now to the point where it really doesn't matter. We can just send it to whatever. We have just about everything covered.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always that way. We started just in graphics and then slowly grew and expanded with always a single mindset. Whatever the marketer needs, we want to make.
Yeah, because they're essentially, if they can go to one person, if your client has a dozen different type products that they need and you can only do one or two of them, less attractive than if.
Right. And one of our biggest challenges is just getting our clients to realize that. So, like I was with a client today, was a marketer for a banker, and she's been using us for graphics for years and years, didn't realize it. It's very hard to see us in a different light. That's one of the ways the tours do it. I can tell them all they want. They won't hear it. Yeah. But you bring them on a tour, they see them, they see it, they touch it.
Oh, you do that.
Yeah, they do that. Then they figure, even though I told them 10 times, they're still going to say, oh, I didn't know you did that. Yeah. It's like, how do you not know that? So finally, you just realize they've got to see it for themselves. Yeah. So,
a great tour. All right, Stephen, let's sneak in a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. One of our sponsors, MBD Maintenance, is excited to announce that after 25 years, they're rebranding their company name to Pivotal. It's the same ownership, same staff, same location. Just a new name that better represents the services that they provide their clients across the Southeast United States. Pivotal does commercial building construction and renovation. They do tenant improvement work and retail and office facilities. They do installation of dock doors in distribution centers, storm and fire damage repair, and catastrophe recovery for national disasters. The team at Pivotal is simply the best. Their experience, they crush schedules, and they have an impeccable safety record. If Pivotal can help you with your next project, you can find them online at pivotalperforms.com. And we are back with Stephen St. Cyr with Vivid Ink Graphics and Vivid Imprint. And Stephen, a couple of things I noticed on our tour. It was very impressive. Of all those employees that we passed by, you knew everyone's name.
Yes.
And
their spouses too.
Really? And you commented, you engaged with them. But you'd mentioned something to me that you had a practice for new employees. Tell us about that.
Well, we have a whole onboarding procedure. Part of the onboarding procedure is I take every new employee to lunch. Yeah. Earlier, when we were small, I used to take them one at a time, then two at a time. Now, unfortunately, I have to do it once a month. So I take all the employees from the month.
Yeah.
And it's usually three, four, anywhere from 3 to 5. And it's been people out of seminary with atheists. It's been every kind imaginable. Every kind of people you can imagine. But it's always a good, entertaining lunch. And each time, even though they have to agree to the values before we hire them, I go over the values of the company again, which is at that lunch. So that lunch only has two purposes: to welcome and to further instill our values, which are serve the customer and each other, work hard, do the right thing, get better and bigger, have fun.
Yeah.
And I make them all learn it. Yeah. Every one of them has to learn it.
That's awesome. Has that been from the beginning?
No, we kind of crystallized that about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
The values.
Yeah. So talking about from the beginning, I wanted to back up to when you were young. You grew up in a big family.
12 kids.
How in the world did that work?
Didn't know anything different.
Yeah.
I did learn a lot of unique skills. I didn't realize they were unique.
Yeah, right.
But I was the fifth of 7. There were 7 of us in 10 years, and then a gap, and then there's 5 more. All same parents, same everything. And so I'm used to lots and lots of chaos around, and just lots and lots of people. Our house was commonly playground central. And so you would always have multiple conversations going on at the same time. And I didn't realize till I started my business that, earlier businesses than this, that everybody couldn't do that, because I could listen to every word of another conversation and still keep going on talking to you like normal and never miss a beat of either one, and then at one point turn around and answer it. And it would freak people out at work when I would be talking to you, then all the way just turn around and answer a question from somebody asking else. So I had to teach myself not to do that. But it has come in really, really handy. Like when my son was at LSU and was involved at Christ the King, they were having a tailgate party, whatever, and he invited me. So Don and I went, and there's a big table of 20 people, and we're having this conversation, and there's another conversation goes on, and I said, yeah, I'm pretty much a mentalist. And they said, what do you mean? I said, just pick any one of theirs over there. I can describe them to the T. And they didn't believe me. I said, no, you can't. I said, yeah, I absolutely can. Just pick one. So they picked some college girl, and I just said, well, she's sophomore education, probably 3rd or 4th grade. She's struggling in English. And I was just going on, and she's left there freaking out. I was like, how did you know that? I listened to their conversation. I didn't really know. They just didn't realize they were talking all about. I was just recapping what they were talking about.
That is hilarious.
So anyway, you learn a lot of different things when you grow up, because we were all really close in age.
Yeah.
So it's not like big gaps.
That's interesting. So I'm one of 7. My father was one of 14.
Wow.
And but I think big families, there are all sorts of things that you learn about, but you don't know it's unique, like you said.
Right, you don't know it's
and
unique.
It comes into play later on.
Yeah.
But I suspected that definitely helps you in what I saw of you, how you engage with your employees. So I thought that was pretty cool. So let me ask you, were you entrepreneurial as a kid?
I was money-centric as a kid.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I was I guess so. I had a paper out, and I would think of it from early on. I was always an entrepreneur. And then I went away to Operation Desert Storm. I went through college on RTC. One of 12, we had to pay for our own college. So I got an RTC scholarship.
LSU?
Yeah, LSU. And then I got Operation Desert Storm came off, and I got sent to the Gulf War for a year. And that's when I decided, I'm going to go to work. When I come back, I'm going to go start my own business. Had no idea.
Now, why? I mean, why do you think that was?
Well, unfortunately, and I hate people who do this now as a business owner, but I would last about 2 or 3 years and get bored, and then quit and go work somewhere else for the first couple. first couple. Now, if I see that on a resume, I just throw it away, but move on. But that's how I did that for a while. And I realized that, I thought, it might have been arrogant, but I thought I could just run things better. So I came back and said, told my wife I was going to open my own business. And she had 3 rules. She didn't want to sell her friends. No network marketing, nothing that she was going to worry about our friends. She didn't want what she called a soul killer, but that she meant a restaurant or a bar, something that worked
just work endlessly.
Lots of hours. Yeah. And she didn't want to move. Her mother was sick at the time. So I just decided, okay, I can live with that. And I just picked the sign business and opened up the sign shop.
So any particular reason why you settled on that?
Well, because it fit my wife's criteria, and I had started with a partner. I watched the computer industry. I owned half a design business that I didn't really do anything. That I just funded, and gave him a kick in the butt to get off. It was a friend who was working for someone else, wasn't happy, and customers coming to him saying, "Hey, if you go on your own, we'll go with you." And so I just kicked him in the butt and ended up owning half of that business for 20 years. But he pretty much ran it, and I watched the computer industry change the whole graphic design business, and it was doing the same for the sign business. And so I knew that the technology was changing from hand painting and then to cut signs and to print signs later. And so that's usually a good time to get in, and so that's why I picked it.
And so how do you start a business if you haven't done it?
Probably not the best person to ask. I just did it. In my case, I literally got in my car and drove to New Orleans, walked into a sign shop there. This guy's name was David Lividay. He owned High Tech Signs at the time. And I said, hey, I met the owner, and I said, can I hang out here for a day? I'm over at a sign shop in Baton Rouge. He looked at me, thought I was crazy. I said, sure. I took him to lunch, talked all day, spent the whole day, came back, and just didn't know much about signs at all. But honestly, that was Superior Signs. That was a predecessor, a different company.
Right.
And then I wouldn't say the first 6 months our signs weren't very good, but we grew like wildfire. I mean, within 2 years, we were the largest non-electric sign shop in Baton Rouge by far.
So what kind of printing were you doing initially?
It wasn't even printing. It was cut vinyl. You would cut vinyl. You would rolls of colored vinyl. Yeah. You'd cut it and apply it. That was all, whether it was a banner or a sign. That was the early days. That's how it was all done back then.
Right.
And we got much, much better. And I remember the very first sign I ever put up. And I remember thinking like how wonderful it was. And then a year would go by and I think, yeah, it's not that good. And then another year would go by and say, yeah, it's really not. It's really bad. And I was thinking like the sign hadn't changed. I had changed. Right. I had gotten so much tougher and stricter. It's like, yeah, we would never let that out of the shop today. I mean, 2 years later, it would have been rejected. But it's like at the time, I thought it was wonderful.
It was cutting edge vinyl, right?
but the quality just wasn't there. But we did learn quickly on quality issues.
Yeah. So what was the course for Superior Signs? How long did you stay in that?
My brother came in about a year after second year and bought half of it. And then we wrote a software to run it. And we grew it to probably 5 locations and about 60 people. And then
all in Baton Rouge?
One in New Orleans, one in Covington, one in Lafayette, and 3 in Baton Rouge.
Oh, wow.
And then we sold off all the different locations and did the software for a while. And then I got out of the software and restarted Vivid Ink.
So you were in Superior for a number of years, built it.
5 or 6.
Sold it.
Focused
on the software side. Right. What lessons did you learn on that?
Well, you can't have 2 businesses at the same time. Not that one person runs. Right. You've got to have one master. Now you can have like somebody. So like Vivid Imprint, Aaron runs it. Right. And New Orleans, Brett runs it. I still like give him guidance and oversee it, but I don't try to run the day to day. Back in the early days, I learned that doesn't really work. Right. So I run Vivid Ink Baton Rouge. And that was one of the things I've learned. The other thing I've learned is, like, software was sexy and kind of more glamorous, but I really like the manufacturing, the production, the operations, the building, the touching, the seeing, the type of business better.
Yeah, I can see that. So when you started Vivid Inc. after
Right.
you got out of the computer side of the software side of it, did you have a partner at that point?
So Colin still my partner today, bought one of the locations, and he actually, one of the locations we split into just digital printing, and which was kind of separate. It was more separate back then, and the sign shop. And we sold the digital printing to Colin, and he ran it for a year. And then I came back in and we renamed it Vivid Inc.
Awesome.
And so we're still partners today.
And so that was what year Vivid Inc. started?
Colin started in 99. I came back in 2000.
2000. And so what did the growth look like after that? I mean, you had some experience under your belt, right?
So 2000 to in the year 2000, we were doing about 300,000, and we went to 5, then to 8, then to 1,000,001, then to 1.5 million, then 2.5, 3. Then we stayed at 3 for a couple years, then 4, then a quick jump to 6, then 7. Now we're at 19. But so it's kind of like you grow, flat, hit a ceiling, you break out of the ceiling, grow for a while, then hit another ceiling, grow for a while, hit another ceiling.
And all the while, as you're growing your business, you need square footage for your equipment.
Well, every time you double, you need a totally different structure. So from 1 to 2 is a double, 2 to 4 people, I'm talking people, is a double. So when it's just you, it's pretty easy, you just do everything. When it's one person, okay, now you can pretty much know everything still. And then 4, you can still, but after about 20 people, you can't know every job anymore. Once you get to 80 people, you really need a team of managers, like a solid, strong team of managers. Really, every time you double, you need a different structure. And the hard part is, if you look at custom manufacturing, which is what we're custom manufacturing. So a cabinet shop is also a custom manufacturer. Right. Oh, and there's lots of cabinet shops. Right. You'll see the 1 and 2. You'll see the 5-6 man. You'll see the 20-man shops. You'll see the 80 to the 100, and then you see the 250-man shop. And there's very little in between, because you can't stay in between very long. You either have to, because it's chaos. For example, at 20, you don't have an IT guy.
Right.
At 80, you pretty much do.
Right.
At 20, you don't have an accountant. You don't have a controller.
In-house, yeah.
You don't have an in-house. You have a bookkeeper.
Right.
At 100 plus, you have a controller.
Right.
You can't stay at the 50 because you don't know whether you should have a counter. It just doesn't work.
Right.
Not long term. It's too much chaos. And if you look at custom manufacturings across the board, whether they're printers or cabinet shops or tombstone makers, anything like that, they're going to be those sizes. And you just look around there, and you can walk into a shop and know what size it stays. And usually they grow to the managers of the owner ability to manage, and they stay there. So the guy's shop I walked in high tech was 20 years. He's been in business 20 years. When I bought him, he had 5-6 employees. Great guy, but it's the same size. 10 years later, we were, 30, 40, 50 people at least. He was still 5. We bought him out and opened New Orleans. So I ended up buying out the guy who walked in the shop to it.
Did you really?
I really did. Still friends today. And he worked for me for 3 years, then opened up a wholesale shop that sells only to sign shops in Covington.
Oh, that's so cool.
So like the guy that walked in, he was very profitable, but it was at that steady state, that his ability to manage. Now, he's not unique. That is pretty standard. And,
right.
And so he's at the common stage where if you got to keep your hands on everything in this industry, you got 5 or 6 people. That's it. That's all. Maybe 7. If you're really good, 8 or 9, but that's it. You can't have 15. You can't keep your hands on everything.
Yeah.
So if you can't delegate and get out of things, that's your limit. And that was kind of a very common. You see a lot of 1 and 2s. You see a lot of 6, 7 man shop. And so, that's how we opened New Orleans. Now, we took New Orleans, and within 3 years, we doubled it. And then it went through a series of kind of flat for several years, and now it's been growing again.
So before you got in where you're now, a big box store, you had grown into a number of different buildings, right? What did it mean when you could take that I'm not sure the arrangement, but I read that you were like in 3 different buildings. What did that mean to your production, your efficiency, when you could get them all into one building when you bought the Circuit City building?
So when we bought the Circuit building, we had lots of time to plan it out. And so you can generate a production flow. Right. And that production flow works great. And then what happens is you get bigger and bigger, and you need more space, and then the flow starts to break down. And that's where we are facing now. And so it was fabulous when we bought the Circuit City building, because we went from about 15,000 square feet over 3 buildings, a 10, a 3, and a 2, to 30,000 square feet. And so you had and that was all in one building.
Right.
So you could plan the flow.
Right.
And you got to plan the workflow. And what happens is, as you grow, the workflow's got to change, but it's not but your buildings, you can't just plop a new building or make more space.
So the flow allows you to grow.
Right.
And then grows you to a point where the flow doesn't work anymore.
That's exactly right.
And so you turned around and bought the building next door.
Yep.
Right? Haverty's. And that added about 50,000 feet?
47.5.
Yeah.
And we're using about 80% of it right now. And they said we never fill, like I said, when I said we bought this building, I told all the guys we never fill it up. They all laughed at me. All my team, they laughed at me.
They knew you better than that.
Yeah, they knew. They laughed at me. So it looks like by next year, we'll have it 100% filled up.
So let's talk about acquisitions, because you mentioned a couple of them. Your first one, whether it's an acquisition, merger, or whatever, was which?
The first one, was probably High Tech in New Orleans about 10 years ago.
Okay.
Which
is the one you just mentioned.
Yes. Yeah. That was that was probably the second biggest one too. They had 5 or 6 people, and it was an ongoing very profitable business.
Acadian Print?
Acadian Sign, yes.
Acadian Sign.
That was 2 people.
Yeah.
Fairly
so
small.
what are you looking at in each of those instances? What do you really feel like you're buying? Are you buying talent?
So it depends. Each one is different. In New Orleans, we wanted an ongoing base operation that could give us like a credibility in the city, and we wanted to be seen. New Orleans. You need to be seen in New Orleans,
right.
And so that was like a base. And then we also bought advertising in New Orleans at some point and merged them in. That was more just people and a few customers that we keep. But for Acadian, there was 2 specific customers that we really wanted. That was 80% of their business, and 2 people. That's what we were buying.
I see.
2 customers and 2 people in that particular instance. In Michael Beverage Corporation, which owned NBC Signs, we bought that, right. And it was a few customers that we wanted.
Right. First Graphics?
First Graphics was a merger. Now that was a different scenario altogether. That was not an acquisition. That was a true merger in the sense the owners there got equity in Vivid, right. Which is by far the most expensive way to buy it.
Right.
But the reason we wanted that is we were doing Canes, they were doing McAllister's. We had lots and lots of local work. But Margaret, one of the owners there, really had the ability to sell national and get other national accounts, but service them, didn't have the structure to service them. Putting it together, we felt that we would unleash her to go out and get more national accounts. And that actually did pay off. Yeah. So at the time, we were about 8.5. They were about 3.5 in sales. 8.5 million, 3.5. So that was about 12, and that was 6 years ago, maybe 2015, something like that.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah.
And now we're just the main company. We split. Now we're counting 25 million with all 3 companies. So we more than doubled.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's interesting because you can, as you mentioned, that's an instance where you're buying talent.
We're buying talent and customers and people. So we wanted the whole pack. We just absorbed the whole package.
Yeah.
It works best if you can absorb the operation, absorb all the people.
So
IPC was another one. Now that I'm thinking about it, and that was more offset. We wanted more offset expertise, which is what they were in, and we wanted the owner.
Yeah, and then what about on the Imprint side?
The Imprint was a combination of 3 things. It was a startup. We merged in AAS, which was a embroidery screen printing shop, clothing, apparel, and ad specialty shop, and a few guys from previously worked for Exact all came in and became partners, and all put it all together. So it was a function of putting different pieces, 4 different pieces, all together to have all the elements to make one company.
Vivid Imprint.
Somebody to run it who was very capable of running it, people to sell, and people to produce, and the finance behind it. So.
Yeah, it's really pretty interesting, Steve. When you step back and hear you talk about it, it's just what you do every day. But a number of acquisitions or mergers where you're trying to accomplish different things, whether it's talent or customers or market or access to national clients. But you've taken all that and brought on all those parts and pieces to be able to offer as much of an offering to your customers as you can, which, again, just makes your company more attractive. So,
thank you.
And I was curious, your finance degree, you had a master's from LSU in finance. What role that played in your ability to think at that level?
Well, until about 2 years ago, I served as the controller as well. I served president and controller. I've always thought of, it's kind of weird. I have a sales personality, but I'm more of a finance operations. I come from all my siblings are engineers. I come from my father is an engineer. We got a sibling, but just brothers that are engineers. So I come from that kind of background. But that's not me personally, personality-wise. And so the finance allows me to look at things from a numbers perspective and say, well, does this make work? Does this make sense? Does the numbers work? Because you can't, no matter how good you are, if the numbers don't work, they're not going to work. If it's not going to be profitable, you can't. So that's been very, very helpful. Also, I have a real look. I can look at a balance sheet, income statement, and just tell you what fails the common sense test, and say, yeah, something's wrong here.
That's not right.
That's not right, or something. Go back, and then we don't look at things from an accounting perspective in the sense of we look at things from an entrepreneur's perspective. I'll give you a story about that.
Yeah.
And so, a new controller came to me. This is right after the flood, the recent.
2016?
No, I'm sorry, the Hurricane Ida.
Oh, yeah.
So it was the worst case scenario. It went straight down through Hammond and took out both Baton Rouge and New Orleans for a week. And so, Baton Rouge is New Orleans back up, and New Orleans is Baton Rouge is back up. So they do the same thing. This literally, both of them were out of power for a week. Well, your customers will be very sympathetic for about a day and a half. By day 3, they really don't care. Right. They just want their stuff, right? And so... But we got by through all that. What do you do with the people that can't work? Because there's literally no work to do. There's no power, right?
Right.
And so we were struggling with the controller. And he said, what do you do? And it amazes me that, like, people in most businesses don't realize. So what we did, I said, what we're going to do is declare, we're going to grant everybody 20 hours of emergency. Because it was declared national emergency, you can give people grants. You can't legally under normal circumstances but a grant to take care of emergency expenses is non-taxable. And you can only do that on declared national emergencies for employees.
Wow.
So if you do that and you give them 20 hours, that equates to like 28 of pay.
Right.
And it only costs us about 16 hours of pay because of the tax burden. So for 2 days, I can give them 3.5 days of pay if I do it as a grant. And then I said, okay, they'll get 3.5 days. We're ending in Sunday. We got power back on Sunday. I'm pulling everyone, and Monday was a holiday. We're going to make that day Friday. The holiday is Friday. So now they got 3.5 days pay. They got the holiday pay, so that's 4.5 days. You're only out half a day. So everybody can use just 1/2 a day of vacation if they want and get a full week's equivalent of a full week's check. And it only costs us half a week, but everyone's working the Labor Day or Memorial Day or whatever. I said, but accountants accountants in general don't think like that.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs think like that.
Yeah.
So it costs us money. Right. Now, you have to care enough about your people to say, a lot of these guys, live paycheck to paycheck. They've already spent their vacation.
Yeah.
They can't go a week without pay. We can't just chuck out a whole week's pay.
Yeah.
But we can survive 2 days.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
So that's just kind of creative accounting that's legal, that's looking at the employee's benefit first.
That's fascinating. Okay, let's take another pause there, get a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. We would like to thank Gear Train for their support of the NXT Entrepreneur Podcast. Gear Train is a national program management company that specializes in the inspection and audit of conveyor systems, VRCs, robotics, and material handling equipment. Gear Train also manages routine maintenance and repair programs, as well as emergency callouts for clients all across the United States. Gear Train technicians have the experience to keep your automated equipment systems running at peak output. For all of your inspection, audit, and maintenance needs, reach out to Gear Train. They can be found online at geartrainperforms.com. And we are back with Stephen St. Cyr. Stephen, I was really intrigued with so many things, as I've mentioned on your tour, but one of them was the inventory that you house for your clients' products.
Right.
So you'll do a run of whatever it is, decals or signs or whatever, and but you'll house some inventory there that they can just order and you guys can ship out.
Sure. So if you would think whether it's Community Coffee or Cane's or McAllister's or any of the many, many others, each individual, either region or restaurant or branch, goes online and usually orders. Well, it's not efficient to print one label or one roll or one sign. So we print hundreds, stock them, they go online, we ship them out. And for most of the clients, not all, we own it, the inventory.
Right. In other words, that's on your nickel, and
it's on my nickel, and we get paid when we ship them.
Right.
And we have agreements with them that if they change it or discontinue it, then they'll buy us out. And we usually stock a 3 to 6 months supply.
Yeah. So I was impressed with the amount of shipping that you guys do. I mean, there's a FedEx truck backed up to your plant.
And every day, it's filled up at least once a day, sometimes several times. On the rollout days, it'll be 5 times a day. But on a small day, one truck. Most days one. The busy days, could be 3, 4, 5 trucks.
We're talking the
20-foot box trucks.
A 20-foot box truck and filled with product. And so shipping is a part of your cost. Is that?
My wife, they take me to the box seats at the Saints game, being a Saints fan. And my wife said, why in the world would FedEx take you and your daughter? My daughters and I are both big Saints fans, and her now husband, fiance at the time, to the box seats. And I said, love, they would take me anytime I asked. She said, why? I said, do you have any idea how much money we spend with FedEx? She said, yeah, I don't know, 10 grand a month. I said, love, we spend 125 to 150 grand a month. Do the math. It's like $1.5 million. We do about $1.5 million a year with FedEx. Yeah. I said, yeah, that's why they take us to the box.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a lot.
It's a lot of. We ship. I don't know how many thousands of packages. I used to know.
Now, has that increased dramatically over the years?
Yes, yeah. So also over we started just local, and so there was very little shipping. When we started, and we also ship UPS, but a lot more FedEx. And I would say over the last 10 years, it has skyrocketed.
Yeah, like so many other things, right?
Yeah, but just the volume.
One other comment that I saw, and I really liked how I mentioned when you walked around and you know everyone's name, but I mean, you dress like many of them. You're hands-on, and I thought your office was very modest and I think
not near the biggest office.
Yeah,
because when it was built, it was like designed, but then some of the other offices, the way it worked out, it had to be expanded 2 feet, and they were all worried that they're going to be like way bigger than mine. It's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
It's like,
but I think it says a lot about what's important to you.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about your culture and your values that you guys have built over the years, and tell us about that.
So our values are very. Did I already tell you our values?
You mentioned.
So our values are very strict. We pray before the meetings. We don't make apologies for it. It is who we are. We let everybody know who we are beforehand. We have Employee of the Month, and we read them all. And usually there's 2, but this past month there were so many nominations. We had 3. Each of the companies have it, the bigger companies. And one of them, we had a big Thanksgiving celebration. And one of the guys took all the extra food and on his own time brought it to the food bank and donated it to it. And like that, to me, that was like ideal. Like that guy he was Employee of the Month this month. And it's not they get a parking spot and $50, a $50 bill cash. And so, but there's a lot of things we do to try to keep our 5th value, which is have fun, because it is a stressful business. I mean, there is tight deadlines. There is a lot of overtime. It is a stressful business.
So you've got to get all your people. One of them is being customer-centric,
right?
So
first value, customer service.
You've got to get everyone. I mean, 95% of your team could do their job and nail it, but if it doesn't get shipped out right, you still got an upset client. So, how much energy does it take for you to keep everyone on focus for that?
So it's you got to be humble, and you got to recruit humble people, because ours is such a thing they'll make mistakes. So it's crazy. We custom make everything. So the error rate is 4 to 5% in the industry. Now we run 1 to 2%.
Wow.
Okay. So that's really good until you think we do just in the Baton Rouge plant, the main Baton Rouge, we do 3,500 jobs a month. So that's divided by 20. What is that? 150, 175 jobs a day. So just call it 200. That's 3 to 4. That's 3 jobs every day that are done wrong.
Yeah.
So even though our percentage is way low, it's still 3 jobs. So you have to be able to deal with people that are, and make it right.
Yeah.
So our philosophy is really simple. We rather get screwed than screw you. And when something goes wrong, we simply make it right.
Yeah.
And we track it. I can tell you exactly how many jobs go wrong every month. So to us, if we are remaking it for any reason, if you're not happy, we're going to make it right. And if we're making it not being paid, that's wrong. If it's late, that's wrong. If it wasn't priced right, that's wrong. These are our metrics. Right. Different than values. These are our metrics.
So starting to wrap up, what is your vision for the future growth of your Vivid companies? So
they'll get more and more integrated in terms of Vivid Imprint and Vivid Ink and Vivid Ink New Orleans. They'll continue to grow a lot, both locally and nationally. Nationally is outside Louisiana. Locally is Louisiana. They do run separate divisions, but I see, ideally, we want to grow about 10% a year. Unfortunately, and fortunately, this year we grew about 37%.
Oh my goodness!
But that's chaos.
And why was that?
A lot of it is the integration of Vivid Imprint is starting to take off. A lot of our existing clients are now using us for shirts and hats, and that's really growing. That's really, really growing. Part of it is a lot of people got money because the government has pumped so much money into the economy, and part of it is we generally grow 5 to 10% a year. Right. So it's kind of like how much is what? I'm not sure, but it's those 3 reasons that's caused the growth for this year. But we'll be up as overall about 35%. In Vivid Ink, about 39%.
That's amazing. That's a big year.
Yeah, that's a stressful year, though. I like 10%. Now, when we were small, I could handle 35%. It's much harder to handle it when you're bigger.
Yeah. I mean, it's just hard to put your hands around everything.
In my day, I spent more and more recruiting people because I still have a heavy, heavy hand in the hiring because in the end, they all have my name behind, even though it doesn't have my name behind it. It does. I never wanted any business. None of the business, I've done lots of business, ever had my name on it. But it's still, it's where the buck stops, and I really do a key on who we hire. And so that's taken more and more of my time. That's my next project. I have to figure out how to delegate more of that, too.
So speaking of time, I saw where you have an interesting hobby, or maybe a few of them, but one of them is flying.
Yeah.
And I was just curious, you can tell me how you got into that and what that does for you.
So it used to be a really fun hobby. Now it's mostly a mode of transportation.
Really?
So, yeah, I don't fly too often except when I'm going to places. Like my daughter, who we learned together, when she turned 15, my sons and I had sports. But she wasn't really into sports, and we didn't have a lot in common. So we went to learn to fly together. And it's been wonderful because it bonded us. And she was a natural. So she was always going to be an engineer. She got an aeronautical engineering degree from the Air Force Academy. But she ended up going to the Air Force Academy and then flight school, and is now captain for the Air Force and been flying she's now 29. So I guess I've been flying for a little over 14 years. But since she was 17, she was going to Virginia, and so her brother, my son, and they went to camp for many years. And this her last year, she flew him by herself, and they didn't believe her. She was 17, had her own license and her own plane. And so she flies there, and they said, okay, what time is your flight going to get here? And she said, around 3 o'clock. She could pick her up at the airport. And this is in Asheville, North Carolina. And they said, okay, what time does you leave? I said, whenever you take me back, that's when I leave. And they say, no, what time does your flight leave? And I said, whenever you get there, that's when it will leave. And then finally she brought him out, showed him the plane, and said, see this plane? It's going to sit here for the next 3 weeks while we're camped. After 3 weeks, you can bring it back. I'm going to fly it back home, dude. Oh, you're going to fly that back to Louisiana? Yeah.
That's amazing.
So, but yeah, see, and then she was just really good at it. And so, but now I scare her because now she knows everything that's wrong, can go wrong. And, she's a professional, and she's been an instructor and evaluator, and she's the one who says whether he can fly for the Air Force. And it's like, and plus I'm way too laid back with the air traffic control talking. Like she wants everything Air Force specific. And, it's like, yeah, I landed a plane, nobody got hurt, we're good. She wants you to be dead center of the runway, perfect speed, perfect everything. It's like, nah, I landed, we're all good.
That's funny.
Yeah. But I always tell her, Amy, if it's ever a real emergency, plane's yours. Yeah. Until then, sit on your hands and shut up. I got this.
What are you flying?
A Cirrus SR-22. It's the one with the parachute. It's the plane with the parachute on it. Yeah,
I'm very familiar with it.
That's what we fly.
And how long have you had that one?
Since 2009.
Yeah.
I think. The plane's a 2006. Being a finance guy, I had a Cessna before that. The financial crash killed the plane market.
Right.
And so the values of what you could buy a plane just got cut in half within a very, very short time. Right. And that's when I bought it.
Yeah. That's cool. And then there's some bonus depreciation programs for that now, I believe.
Yeah, but we use we buy expensive equipment, so we use all the appreciation, all the bonus depreciations.
Very cool. Well, Stephen, thank you so much. I tell you what, anyone who takes a tour of your facility will get a clear understanding of what a complex business you have and
well, the only
what
way
is involved.
The only way really to understand what we do is just come see. See, I'll give you a tour.
Yeah, it is amazing. It would be a time well spent. So thank you, sir. I appreciate your time yesterday and today. So continued success with all you do, and I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. I've known about Stephen's businesses for a long time, but walking through his plant really showcases how complex his operations are and all that he does. He's a super smart guy. He has a firm grasp on the finance side of the business as well as the operations. And in many businesses, that's run by two different people. I loved how he talked about having a high tolerance for risk, which clearly is a fuel for the growth of his company, but he's debt adverse. So he's been able to grow his company without building up a lot of debt, which is just extremely important. The other thing I really liked hearing him say is the strategies for his acquisitions, whether he was buying talent, buying into a market, or buying into a customer base. So much to learn about Stephen, extremely successful guy. We wish him continued success in all he does. We appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur Podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.